What's up, guys, and welcome back to Tech Planet. Today is going to be about a 1-year update on the Monstera from seed. Let's check it out. Because it's been a long time since I posted an update on the Monstera seeds and seedlings, let me give you a small refresher. I got these seeds in May of 2021 off of Etsy, and then I planted them in some sphagnum moss, and I also just tried some Monstera mix or aeroid mix, whatever you want to call it, which is just a few different typical substrates mixed together that are very airy. Anyways, I wanted to test the two differences to see if it really mattered. After about a month, maybe a little less of growing, we started to see some actual leaves starting to protrude from the seeds, and it did appear as if the sphagnum moss was better right off the bat. But then about another month or two went by, and I think we're in about July, so maybe 2 months, a little less actually because it's early July. But you can see they really started to take off, and you can't really see much of a difference between either substrate. If I told you to guess right now, you probably couldn't. Then I pretty much neglected these for about 2 or 3 more months, and that brought us to about 6 months, sometime around early December. And you can see they've all grown pretty well and really have filled out the substrate. It is basically just a root mat and there's nothing else in there, so they really did well. Because I had way too many seedlings, I didn't really know what to do with them, so that was the start or end of the last video, but the start of this video really is an experiment. I really wanted to mess around with potting these up differently and seeing how it affected the overall growth. The first experiment I wanted to try was just with a solo seedling, just because I didn't have enough parts, but I've been working on all kinds of different moss pull designs. I haven't released any yet. I know a lot of people ask about it, but I haven't had the time to consistently sell them, so I haven't even begun. But anyways, I tried one on here because I really want to show that having them grow into something or up something where they can root into will help them fenestrate faster and get more mature quicker. So that was one experiment. The second one is just using a plank of wood. Some people say it works. I have my doubts in my setup because it's not humid enough in my opinion, or at least in my setup. This wood gets really dry and I feel like the roots aren't going to want to attach to something that's dry and not inviting, but we'll try it anyways. So I got a few seedlings potted up in this one. This next one, you can maybe call it the control, but honestly this is not really much of an experiment, so I don't know. But this one is just going to be a regular pot of some seedlings just to maybe have something to compare it with. Again, this isn't like a super stringent experiment, but whatever. One is just a regular pot. And then lastly, I did want to try a Lekka style one. A lot of people are growing plants in Lekka. I wanted to give it a shot and just see if it works. Probably not the most ideal setup. Most people put them in deeper dishes, but from my experiments with Lekka, this should be just plenty fine. You don't really need to douse them in a ton of water, so this little water catch will be just fine. Alright, so jumping a little more than 6 months ahead, here we are at the big update, I guess, of how these all grown and what they've done and if there was any difference. Right off the bat, they're looking a little goofy or a little dry. I haven't watered them in a while and I was on vacation for a while, so excuse that part of it. They normally look a lot more healthy, but a few of them are a little more dry than normal. So we're just going to be looking at the maturity of the leaves and the overall size. So the first one we're going to take a look at is going to be the Lekka one. This one was actually a lot easier to care for than I thought it would. In my opinion, Monstera are really drought and overwater tolerant. Some of you may not agree, but I've let these things sit dry as a bone for over a week or two, and they're just fine. And I've just filled them up with water, and they're still fine. This one had pretty decent growth, not a lot of crazy fenestrations, but it grew pretty well for just being in clay pellets that I got wet once in a while. You can definitely see that there's quite a bit of a root structure outside of the pellets, and that's really where all the water would kind of sit and settle, so it really liked to grow into the water. I don't know how good the root structure is in the pellets, but it seems to be holding in pretty well, so this one did alright. Next up is our control, or sort of control. Like I said, this isn't a super amazing experiment, so don't eat me up in the comments. But this one had a max of 4 fenestrations, and like most of the seedlings we're seeing, they've all hit about 6 leaves total per seedling. So 4 fenestrations is pretty good, and the leaf is pretty large. I did try and plant these in the corner just to give them the most room that they need. I really wouldn't worry about overcrowding these plants. I have big full pots with 4 or 5, 6, even 7 different branches coming out of it. I prefer it that way because it gets a little more bushy. But anyways, this one did pretty good. Next up is our large pot with the really big 2x4, although I think it's more like a 1/2 inch by 2 inch slab of wood, whatever it is. It's not a 2x4. Anyways, This one is pretty bushy. I think there was a total of 4 seedlings in here. If we try and take a look at what our best one is, it looks like it's about 4 fenestrations with, again, the typical 6 leaf. This one is quite a bit bigger than the rest, and its proximity to the wood is pretty close. There is one big air root that totally missed the wood. However, I'm going to try and bend it back over to the wood and maybe it'll grab on. But again, that wood is so bone dry that I'm not sure it's actually going to. Appearance wise though, I do like this bigger pot the best. They seem to be the most mature for some reason and the largest, and I just like a bushy pot, so it always looks good than just solo vines in my opinion. So if I were you and you had a bunch of seedlings, stuff them all in one pot because you can see it doesn't really hinder growth. Alright, looking at our last one with the 3D printed moss pole, you can see this one has done the best. Its 6th most mature leaf is 5 fenestrations big or large, whatever you want to call it, but it's bigger than the rest of the leaves that we've seen so far. I think this is due to the fact that it actually rooted into the pole on its upper nodes where none of the other ones had the opportunity to do that. So because the plant feels more secure, it's able to grow bigger and get more of those mature leaves. You can see that the root is like embedded right into that moss, and I believe that helped it out a lot. Like I said earlier, this isn't the greatest experiment, and you might be able to argue that because it's the only plant by itself, maybe that helped it. However, the pot is so small, it's just as crowded as any of the other seedlings in my opinion. But either way, this moss pole seemed to have helped and not hurt, so it looks pretty darn good. I'm hoping I can get the next node to latch in again, and then we might be able to really see it take off quick. Not sure, maybe the pole is too skinny, but either way, it was cool to see the differences. I don't really know if there's much to actually conclude in this experiment. However, the one thing you can take away is you can take your seedlings and put them in pretty much anything and they'll do just fine. I think Monstera are pretty darn hardy, so whatever you got should work well for them and they'll do just fine. Well guys, I hope you liked that update. It was really nice to see that they actually got pretty mature and we started to see fenestrations within the first year. So that's pretty good news for most people trying to grow these from seed. You can expect quite a bit of growth. And from the looks of it, you can plant them pretty much however you want, and they should grow pretty well. However, I really would recommend some sort of moss pole or something for them to climb, because that should get you a lot more fenestrations a lot earlier. As always guys, may your plants grow strong and healthy. I'll see you next time.